The steady beep of machines fills the sterile corridors of Mercy General Hospital, but today something extraordinary cuts through the clinical silence. Grace Washington's voice rises from the hallway outside the ICU, her soulful melody drifting through the heavy doors where billionaire Ethan Malone lies motionless in his hospital bed. But what happened next shocked everyone in the medical facility. Grace adjusts her cleaning cart and continues singing Amazing Grace, the same hymn she's sung every morning for the past 3 weeks. The 42-year-old hospital maid has made this her ritual, arriving early before her shift to offer what little comfort she can to families waiting for miracles. Her rich contralto voice echoes off the pristine walls, drawing curious glances from nurses and occasional smiles from worried relatives. "That woman has the voice of an angel," whispers Mrs. Rodriguez, whose husband is recovering from surgery. "She's been here every day since that poor man was brought in." Inside room 314, Ethan Malone remains unconscious, his body connected to a web of tubes and monitors. The tech mogul's face bears the fading bruises from the yacht accident that nearly claimed his life 3 weeks ago. Doctors say his brain activity is minimal, his chances of recovery uncertain. The accident made headlines nationwide, a mysterious collision during what should have been a routine evening cruise off the California coast. Grace finishes her song and quietly begins her morning cleaning routine, humming softly as she works. She's always felt drawn to room 314, though she can't explain why. Something about the man lying there seems familiar, though she knows they've never met. Little did Grace know that her daily vigil was about to trigger a chain of events that would expose dangerous secrets. Dr. Lisa Carter emerges from the ICU, her expression troubled as she reviews Ethan's latest charts. The neurologist has been treating the billionaire since his arrival, and the lack of progress weighs heavily on her conscience. She notices Grace's cart in the hallway and approaches with a gentle smile. "You're here early again," Dr. Carter observes, her voice warm despite her exhaustion. Grace looks up from organizing her supplies, her dark eyes reflecting quiet determination. "Music has power, doctor. My grandmother always said it could reach places medicine sometimes can't." "I don't disagree with you there," Dr. Carter replies, though her medical training makes her cautious about encouraging false hope. "The family appreciates your kindness." But as Grace prepares to sing her afternoon hymn, something unprecedented happens. Through the glass window of room 314, Dr. Carter spots movement, the slightest twitch of Ethan's right index finger. Her breath catches in her throat as she rushes into the room, checking the monitors with trembling hands. "Grace, keep singing," Dr. Carter calls out urgently, her professional composure cracking. "Don't stop whatever you're doing." Grace's voice grows stronger, more confident, as she continues her melody. Within moments, other staff members gather in the hallway, drawn by the unusual commotion. Nurse Patricia Mills points excitedly at the monitors showing increased brain activity, while Dr. Carter carefully examines Ethan's responses. "It's impossible," murmurs Dr. Martinez, the attending physician who's been consulting on the case. "We've seen no significant neurological responses until now." The finger movement happens again, more pronounced this time, as Grace reaches the chorus of her hymn. The hospital corridor buzzes with whispered excitement about what witnesses are calling a miracle. This decision would change everything for both Grace and the unconscious billionaire. Word spreads quickly through the hospital's network of staff and visitors. By evening, several nurses have discreetly shared videos of Grace singing and Ethan's remarkable responses. The footage begins circulating on social media, drawing attention from medical professionals and spiritual communities alike. Grace continues her routine the next morning, unaware of the growing online interest in her story. Her voice carries even more hope now, buoyed by yesterday's breakthrough. She sings with renewed purpose, sensing somehow that her efforts are making a real difference. But the real shock was still coming. As Grace begins her third song of the morning, she notices a tall, sharply dressed man approaching from the elevator bank. His expensive suit and aggressive stride immediately set him apart from the usual hospital visitors. Martin Bishop's cold eyes scan the corridor before settling on Grace with undisguised irritation. "Excuse me," he says, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I need you to stop this performance immediately." The sterile hallway suddenly fills with tension as Martin Bishop storms toward Grace, his expensive suit contrasting sharply with her modest uniform. His face is flushed with anger, and several nurses pause their conversations to watch the unfolding drama. "You need to stop this nonsense immediately," Martin snaps, his voice echoing off the hospital walls. "This is a medical facility, not some street corner for your little performances." Grace takes a step back, clutching her cleaning supplies tighter. "Sir, I'm not causing any harm. I'm just what? Playing some kind of savior?" Martin's eyes are cold, calculating. "Mr. Malone doesn't need your charity singing. He needs proper medical care, not whatever this is." The confrontation draws more attention as Dr. Lisa Carter approaches from down the hall. She's witnessed enough workplace bullying to recognize it when she sees it. "Excuse me, is there a problem here?" Martin turns toward the doctor, his demeanor shifting slightly as he recognizes authority. "Dr. Carter, I presume?" "I'm Martin Bishop, Ethan's business partner. I'm here to ensure he receives appropriate care without unnecessary distractions." Dr. Carter glances at Grace, remembering how peaceful Ethan had seemed during her singing sessions. "Actually, Mr. Bishop, studies have shown that familiar voices and music can be beneficial for coma patients. Grace's presence has been entirely voluntary and hasn't interfered with any medical procedures." "Beneficial?" Martin lets out a harsh laugh. "The man is fighting for his life, and you're allowing random staff members to treat him like some experiment?" Grace finally finds her voice, though it trembles slightly. "Mr. Bishop, I've been working at this hospital for 12 years. I've seen patients respond to music, to familiar voices. I'm not trying to interfere with anything." Martin's expression darkens further. "You have no idea what you're dealing with here. Ethan Malone built an empire, and there are people who depend on his recovery for their livelihoods. This isn't about your feel-good stories." Dr. Carter steps closer, her protective instincts kicking in. "Mr. Bishop, I need to ask you to lower your voice. This is a hospital, and we have other patients to consider." The tension crackles as Martin realizes he's losing ground. His jaw tightens, and for a moment, something dangerous flashes in his eyes. "Fine. But don't think this ends here." As he starts to walk away, Dr. Carter calls after him. "Mr. Bishop, can I ask about the circumstances of Mr. Malone's accident? Any details might help us understand his condition better." Martin freezes mid-step. When he turns back, his face has gone pale. "It was just an accident. These things happen on the water." But Grace catches something in his voice, a tremor that wasn't there before. She's spent years reading people, understanding the weight of secrets, and Martin Bishop is carrying something heavy. Dr. Carter presses further. "I understand there were some business complications recently. Stress can sometimes affect recovery rates." Martin's hands clench into fists at his sides. "Business complications? That's one way to put it. Ethan made some very poor decisions that cost us millions. The Meridian project was supposed to be our biggest success, but he got cold feet at the last minute." "Cold feet?" Grace asks quietly. "He wanted out. Said he had concerns about the environmental impact, about the communities that would be affected. Suddenly grew a conscience after 20 years in business." Martin's voice grows bitter. "Do you have any idea what it's like to watch everything you've worked for crumble because your partner develops moral qualms?" Dr. Carter exchanges a glance with Grace. There's more to this story, and they both sense it. Martin seems to realize he's said too much. His voice drops to barely above a whisper, but his words hit like thunder. Maybe if Ethan had stayed focused on business instead of playing philanthropist, that yacht wouldn't have had any mysterious mechanical failures. The hallway falls silent except for the distant hum of medical equipment. Grace's eyes widen as the implication sinks in, and Dr. Carter feels her blood run cold. Martin Bishop just suggested that Ethan Malone's accident wasn't an accident at all. The weight of Martin Bishop's threat pressed down on Grace's shoulders as she stood in the hospital parking lot, clutching her worn purse. The morning sun felt different somehow, less warm against her dark skin as she wrestled with an impossible choice. For 3 weeks, she had sung outside the ICU, watching that billionaire's fingers twitch with each melody. Now Martin's words echoed in her mind, "Stop this nonsense, or you'll regret it." Grace took a deep breath and walked through the hospital's automatic doors. She wouldn't let fear silence her voice, not when Ethan Malone was showing signs of awakening. But as she rounded the corner toward the ICU, she nearly collided with a well-dressed woman in her 50s. "Excuse me," the woman said sharply, her designer heels clicking against the polished floor. "Are you the maid everyone's talking about?" Grace straightened her shoulders. "I'm Grace Washington. I sing for Mr. Malone." The woman's perfectly manicured fingers tightened around her Hermes handbag. "I'm Victoria Malone, Ethan's sister. I need to understand why you're here every day, disrupting my brother's care." Before Grace could respond, another voice cut through the tension. "She's not disrupting anything." A tall man in an expensive suit approached, his silver hair immaculate despite the early hour. "I'm Richard Malone, Ethan's uncle. What exactly are your intentions with our family member?" Dr. Lisa Carter emerged from the ICU, her stethoscope draped around her neck like armor. She'd been wrestling with her own demons since Martin's accusation about the yacht accident, torn between her medical oath and the dangerous implications of speaking up. "Mr. and Mrs. Malone," she said diplomatically, "Grace has been providing comfort therapy. Your brother has shown remarkable responses to her singing." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Comfort therapy? She's not even a trained professional. For all we know, she could be after his money." The accusation hit Grace like a physical blow, but she kept her voice steady. "Ma'am, I don't want anything from your brother except for him to wake up and be okay. My singing helped my own grandmother when she was sick, and I thought maybe." "Maybe what?" Richard interrupted. "Maybe you could worm your way into a wealthy man's life? We've seen this before." Dr. Carter stepped between them, her professional composure cracking slightly. "With respect, your brother's responses have been measurable. His brain activity increases significantly during Grace's visits. Whatever her methods, they're working." But even as she defended Grace, Dr. Carter's mind raced with darker thoughts. Martin's suggestion that the yacht accident wasn't accidental had kept her awake for 2 nights. Should she report her suspicions? Her career could be destroyed if she was wrong, but what if Ethan was in danger even now? Grace felt the hostile stares burning into her as hospital staff pretended not to watch the confrontation. "Listen," she said quietly, "I understand your concern. But I've been praying for your brother, singing to him because I believe music can heal. If you want me to stop, I will. But ask yourself if you're doing what's best for him or what's comfortable for you." The silence stretched taut until Victoria's phone buzzed. She answered with a clipped hello, then her face went pale. "What do you mean, reopened?" "The insurance company closed that investigation weeks ago." Richard snatched the phone, his own color draining as he listened. "Yes, we'll be right there," he said before hanging up. He turned to Victoria, his voice barely a whisper. "The maritime insurance investigators want to meet with us immediately. They say new evidence has surfaced about the yacht accident." Dr. Carter's blood ran cold. New evidence. The words seemed to echo in the sterile hallway as the implications crashed over her. If Martin Bishop had done something to Ethan, if the accident really wasn't accidental, then everything was about to change. Grace watched the family members exchange worried glances, their hostility toward her temporarily forgotten in the face of this shocking development. The investigation that everyone believed was closed, that had ruled Ethan's accident as mechanical failure, was suddenly active again. The hospital corridors crackled with an energy that had nothing to do with the usual medical emergencies. Word traveled fast through the sterile halls. The insurance investigation into Ethan Malone's yacht accident had been quietly reopened, and suddenly everyone wanted answers. Grace clutched her worn songbook tighter as she made her way to her usual spot outside the ICU. The whispers followed her like shadows. She could feel eyes on her from every direction, nurses pausing mid-conversation, security guards lingering a beat too long, visitors craning their necks to get a better look at the woman who'd somehow become the center of this unfolding drama. "You sure you want to keep doing this?" Dr. Carter appeared beside her, speaking in low tones. "Things are getting complicated, Grace. Really complicated." Grace looked through the glass partition at Ethan's still form, his chest rising and falling with mechanical precision. But his fingers, those fingers that had twitched just days ago, they told a different story. "Doctor, I've seen miracles in my lifetime. I've also seen what happens when people give up too soon." Inside the ICU, Detective Raymond Nash was setting up recording equipment with practiced efficiency. The lead investigator on the reopened case looked like he'd seen it all: weathered face, sharp eyes that missed nothing, and a reputation for getting results even when powerful people preferred he didn't. Dr. Carter glanced nervously at the detective through the window. "Grace, there's something you need to know. They found irregularities in the yacht's maintenance records. Someone tampered with the navigation system. A setup designed to look like an accident," Grace whispered, her voice heavy with understanding. The revelation hung between them like a physical weight. Grace had suspected something wasn't right about Martin Bishop from the moment he'd tried to silence her singing. But hearing it confirmed sent chills down her spine. Detective Nash emerged from Ethan's room, his expression grim. "Dr. Carter, I need to speak with you privately." "And ma'am," he nodded toward Grace, "I understand you've been here every day since the accident. I'll need to ask you some questions too." As if summoned by the mounting tension, Martin Bishop's voice echoed down the hallway. He was on his phone, pacing near the elevator bank, his usually composed demeanor cracking under pressure. "I don't care what they think they found. My lawyers will handle this. Ethan Malone was careless with that yacht, and everyone knows it." Grace felt her heart rate spike. She'd never heard such venom in someone's voice before, not even when she'd worked for families going through bitter divorces. Dr. Carter stepped closer to Grace. "There's more." The detective found financial records showing Martin had taken out a massive insurance policy on Ethan just weeks before the accident. "We're talking about millions of dollars. That man tried to kill Mr. Ethan," Grace said, the words falling from her lips with shocking clarity. "And here I am, trying to bring him back to expose his would-be murderer." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Grace's daily vigil, her persistent singing that had drawn criticism and confusion, might be the very thing that would bring justice to light. Detective Nash approached them with measured steps. "Ms. Washington, I understand Mr. Bishop confronted you about your singing. Can you tell me exactly what he said?" Before Grace could answer, an alarm from Ethan's room pierced the air. Dr. Carter rushed inside, followed by Nash and Grace. The monitor showed increased brain activity, more than they'd seen since Ethan had arrived. "His vitals are spiking," Dr. Carter announced, checking the readings with practiced efficiency. "Something's definitely happening." Grace moved to her usual position and began singing softly, her voice carrying the same melody she'd sung every day for weeks. But this time, something was different. This time, as her voice filled the small space with "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot," the same lullaby Ethan's mother had sung to him as a child, his eyelids fluttered. Not just the brief movements they'd seen before. This was something more. Something intentional. Detective Nash leaned forward, his recorder ready. Dr. Carter held her breath. And Grace continued singing, watching in amazement as Ethan Malone's eyes slowly, deliberately, began to open. Ethan's eyes flutter open just as Grace reaches the final notes of the lullaby, her voice carrying the same gentle warmth his mother had shared with him 40 years ago. The melody fades, but the connection between them remains electric, palpable in the sterile ICU air. "That song," Ethan whispers hoarsely, his voice barely audible through the oxygen mask. Dr. Carter rushes to his bedside, checking his vitals with practiced efficiency, but her eyes shine with tears of relief. Grace steps closer, her weathered hands clasped together. "You're awake, Mr. Malone. Thank the Lord, you're awake." Ethan's gaze finds hers, and for the first time in decades, his eyes hold genuine warmth instead of cold calculation. "My mother used to sing that to me when I was scared." "How did you know?" Sometimes the heart knows what the mind has forgotten, Grace says softly. You were calling out in your sleep, asking for your mama. I just sang what felt right. As the medical team stabilizes him, Ethan's memory comes flooding back with startling clarity. Martin, he gasps, gripping Dr. Carter's arm. He sabotaged the yacht. We were arguing about the pension fund he'd been embezzling. He loosened the steering mechanism when I went below deck. The investigator, who's been waiting in the hallway, steps forward to record Ethan's formal statement. Within hours, Martin Bishop is in custody, his carefully constructed facade finally crumbling under the weight of evidence in Ethan's eyewitness testimony. But the real transformation happens in the quiet moments that follow. As Ethan recovers over the next few days, Grace continues her visits, no longer singing outside the ICU but sitting beside his bed, sharing stories about her children and her community. She tells him about her daughter Maya, brilliant in mathematics but struggling to afford college, and her son Jerome, who dreams of becoming a doctor but works 2 jobs to support the family. You saved my life, Grace, Ethan says one afternoon, sunlight streaming through the hospital window. Not just by singing to me, but by showing me what real strength looks like. What real love looks like. Grace shakes her head humbly. I just did what felt right in my heart. And that's exactly what I need to learn how to do again. Ethan reaches for her hand. I want to establish a scholarship fund for your children, and for other kids in your community who have the talent but not the opportunity. But more than that, I want you to help me run it. You understand what these families need in ways I never could. Tears stream down Grace's face as she nods. Mr. Malone, that would be a blessing beyond measure. The news spreads quickly through the hospital and the surrounding neighborhood. When Ethan is discharged a week later, he's amazed to find dozens of people gathered outside, nurses who had listened to Grace's singing, families from her church, even some of his own employees who had heard about the transformation. Dr. Carter addresses the crowd, her voice carrying across the parking lot. Sometimes healing comes from the most unexpected places. Grace didn't just bring one man back from the darkness, she reminded all of us what it means to care for each other without expecting anything in return. As Grace begins to sing again, this time a joyful hymn of gratitude, Ethan finds himself humming along. The billionaire who once measured everything by profit margins now understands that the most valuable currency in the world is human kindness. 6 months later, the Grace Washington Community Education Foundation has awarded its first scholarships. Maya is studying engineering at the State University, while Jerome is pre-med at the community college, working toward his dream of becoming a pediatrician. Ethan has restructured his entire business model, focusing on companies that create positive social impact. And every morning, he starts his day the same way Grace taught him, by asking not what he can gain, but what he can give. Standing in the hospital lobby where it all began, Ethan watches Grace receive a community service award. Her voice had awakened more than just a man in a coma, it had awakened the compassion that exists in all of us, waiting for someone brave enough to sing it into existence. The power of kindness, it turns out, is truly miraculous. And sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to sing outside the walls we've built around our hearts.